Pass it forward to the table where I'm sitting with my student Luke Maddock, who is going to be keeping time and keeping the candidates on schedule. And Luke's about to graduate, so if anybody has a nice job for him, you take one of those too. And all the candidates will have 2 minutes for opening remarks, 2 minutes for closing remarks, and then 2 minutes to respond to each of the questions. And I am going to also ask if you can address the questions to all the candidates so that I can ask them of all the candidates and the candidates can respond to all of them. Does anybody have any questions before we begin? We're going to go until 8. So we're going to have basically final questions about 7:45, and then the candidates will have a chance to make their closing remarks. And so with that, I'm going to sit back down, and Luke's going to start timing, and we're going to have opening remarks.
Good evening, and thank you all for being here. My name is Michael Durr, and I'm a candidate for the open seat of Supervisor number 3 for the board of the town of Waukesha. In the past several weeks, I've personally knocked on over 800 doors and talked with over 500 people. And the number one question that I get is, why are you running? There are 2 main reasons that I chose to run for this position. The first is that I was one of the people who were initially critical of Mike Laska and his attendance to the town board meetings from Texas. But when I examined the issue, I realized that Mike ran not once, but twice unopposed. And I felt that before I could be critical of him, it was necessary that I not let that happen again. As it turns out, Mike chose not to rerun for the position, but at that time I had already made my decision. And the second reason is the constant personal fighting that has occurred on the board in the past 5 years, predating the current chairman. This has to come to an end, and I believe that I can help with that. When board members disagree, I want my time to make my position known, and I want others to have the same. But then we need to call the vote, and we need to move on. The personal attacks and the constant fighting on every issue where there is disagreement has to stop, and I believe I can make that happen. There are other issues that face the town: the septic system, low taxes, the financial audit, and of course water, and several other issues that will come up tonight. But if the personal fighting doesn't stop, we will never move on to those other issues. And I believe I am the best person in my race to make that happen. I thank you for your attendance tonight, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Right.
First, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight in large turnout, so I do appreciate it. My name is Jim Radke. I'm a 20-plus year resident of the town of Waukesha. Married a few years longer than that to my wife. Have 2 kids that we raised through the Waukesha school system. One's a freshman at UW Stevens Point, the other is senior at UW Oshkosh. My background is transportation. I've been in the trucking business forever. I also own a coffee shop in the town. I like my large lot. I like my low taxes, and I have excellent neighbors. As with many, a single issue handled poorly got me involved in the town board. It was this single safety-related issue and the ordinance fiasco that forced me to see what was going on. I attended the public hearings, I went to the town meetings, and I was shocked at how poorly I was treated and ignored. To solve the issue, I couldn't get any answers from the town. I was told by many residents and business owners, go to the city, go to the county, they'll get you the answers. I made 2 phone calls to people that I knew at the city and county level, and I had the answer in 10 minutes. That was the proof that I needed to stop an illegal building that was going on adjacent to my business property. It was due to this mistreatment and the poor communication that I decided no one else should be treated this way. And when a town resident made a comment at a town board meeting that in order to change things you need to get involved, I decided to do whatever I could to do that. At first, it was to support a new board and a new candidate. However, when everybody backed down, they all convinced me to run. I merely want to preserve the town that I live in, continue to grow with the times, and provide a business-like solution to running the town. No drama, no questionable acts, and no bickering.
Thank you. Next we'll hear from Angie Van Zock.
Hello, my name is Angie Van Sock. I thank you again all for coming as well. And I have been living in the town with my husband David now for 30 years.
Can't hear you back
You
here.
can't hear me? Okay. My name is Angie Vansot, and we have been living, my husband and I, in the town of Waukesha now for over 30 years. When we moved here in 1984, we bought a ranch home with the intention of retiring here. And that ability and that right is being threatened at this point in time. Our water service area is very, very important and a critical issue in this juncture. And people, I'm sure, are wondering why I would run again too, given the difficult nature of the elections in the last 2 cycles. A lot of misstatements, a lot of misrepresentations, a lot of information that I simply don't know where it came from. And it's a very difficult thing to fight when people are out making statements that are completely untrue. The fact is, I'm still here because I believe in the town. I love the town. I want to remain in the town. And I believe the people who are all smart enough, as smart as Dave and I, who found the town, want to stay here too. And we want low town taxes, and we want water coming out of the tap. And those things are at risk. After 30 years here, we should all have confidence that we're able to rely on those things that brought us here and keeps us here. When I knock on doors, which I have for years now, what amazes me is the tenure of people here, decades and decades. And I think that speaks a great deal for the town of Waukesha being a great place to live. And having the history, having the knowledge at this juncture provides us the opportunity to keep the town, and balance everyone's interests. Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, we have Joe Bansky.
My name is Joe Bansky. I've been serving on the town board since 2010. My initial reason for getting involved and my continued reason for staying involved has been one of a servant attitude. I serve this community in a number of ways, both through the town board as well as through my church where I'm very involved. I believe that some of the things that keep a community as comfortable and as great a place to live is the involvement that its elected officials, its public leaders have in the community. During my time on the board, we have faced some of the toughest decisions that any board of a local town like this would ever have to face. Water, the sewer area. We've had to learn some complex things. We've brought in financial software. We've had lots of hurdles to climb over, and we've climbed over them very well. Some of you may disagree with the process or the execution of how we got there, and it's commonly deemed bickering. In any family, in any political process, you are going to have people that disagree. That's a fair thing, and that's actually sometimes how good policy can be created, and in lots of cases has been created. It has not always been pretty, and sometimes it has been downright ugly, and that's unfortunate, but that is part of our process. My reason to continue to serve and ask for your vote is largely based on, I think, that there is some unfinished business. We have a water service area that we have spent years learning information on. We have a town budget and a capital expenditure fund that I've been working on for 4 years that is starting to see the light of day, and I'd like to see it through to completion. Thank you.
Thank you. The first question, and we're going to start with Jim Radke, and everybody will have 2 minutes to respond. Some people believe we should be friends with the city. Is that your position, and why?
Absolutely. I think we should be friends with all our municipal neighbors. We should be friends with the businesses, our residents, and all the vendors that we do business with. A prime example is we're having water wars. They're going to come to a head here. Whether we get the Great Lakes Pact or not, there still is going to be some negotiation that has to be done with the city. I think we've got a toxic relationship with the city at best, and in order to repair that, we've got some strong work to do. They're going through a mayoral race right now. We may keep Screama. We may get a new mayor in place. Not quite sure how that will happen, but I think it's vitally important that as much as that goes on between the town and the city, that we maintain and nurture that relationship with them. Not only to talk about things such as water and annexation agreements, but also things to do as far as extending services such as police service, fire service, and those types of things. Thank you.
The assumption that is made is that we didn't attempt to work with our neighbors. And that's absolutely untrue. In fact, on June 21st, 2011, the entire town board presented a letter of cooperation and collaboration to the Common Council. It was voted on initially at a board meeting by my request, because I also believe in collaboration and responsible neighborly attitudes. The unfortunate part is, even though we went hat in hand basically and said, after years of fighting, and mind you, the fighting with the town did not start in 2010. The fighting with the town board has been going on forever. The city is very, very weary of the town of Waukesha suing them. And that has been an ongoing issue for decades. It simply wasn't visible in the paper, but it was going on. So when we approached the city, they were very fatigued already and really felt as though we were simply a new set of people that were going to sue them. But we wanted to forge a new relationship. We thought that was an important step, even though they were actively looking to get our water. We were met with indifference. We were met with disdain. We didn't even get a phone call back. We got a terse email after I inquired as to the city's position with our offer. And the bottom line was, don't call us, we'll call you. That call never came, because they have no interest in working with us proactively. Our entire town of Waukesha has been in their land use plan for over 30 years. Their intent is to gobble us up. They've done a good job of that. Unfortunately, we need to stop that, and now they're after our water too. Joe?
The developing of a working relationship with the Common Council creates necessarily an inherent conflict. The members of the council and the mayor are charged with, by their oath, to look after the best interests of the residents of the city of Waukesha. It is in their best interest to take our water and eat up our land. It brings tax base to them. That is in their best interest, which is why, almost without exception, they say yes to every annexation request. Have we tried to reach out to the city and develop relationships? Absolutely. Through this process of not being able to talk to the Common Council, because if you're a town resident, you're not allowed to address them at a meeting unless you are a property owner in the city. I've spent a number of times sending them video messages, which is a use of technology that allows them to view that message, and I can tell you that the Common Council members, with specifically to the water, viewed that message over 100 times. When they were in closed session, they were, as a group, viewing my communication to them through that video messaging while they were in there. So have we made the attempts to communicate with them? Yes. Is it critical that we find some way to work together? Yes. Do we have any personal relationships with them? I would say yes. Sean Riley, who may be one of the mayors, is one of the candidates obviously, and may win, is actually my attorney. Do I have a relationship with them? Yes. Did we talk about the fact that he and I could get linked together through this election process? Absolutely. Do I think that that could prove to be something that I could leverage? I found Sean to be a very nice, easygoing, workable man, which is why I retained him last year.
The right word to use. The city certainly has made that a difficult term to use ever since I've been observing the town board, which is probably 10 to 12 years. And I assure you, Angie, I don't come to the assumption that we haven't tried. Through the years that I've seen our town board struggle with issues with the city, whether it's a personal issue of doing restoration in front of a resident's lawn right across the street here, or a bigger issue, they have been a difficult issue to deal with. I think one of the first things we need to attack is to approach them with a unified board, and we need to be on the same page. And I don't know that we would get that right now out of the state that the current board is in. They have been aggressive in the annexation, and that doesn't bode well for us. But what everybody in this room needs to realize is that whenever there was an annexation request, the request comes from a landowner. Now, very, very often, those requests are coming from developers. But when you buy property or when you buy your home, there are certain rights that go along with it. So it's not all the city's fault when they annex. The reality is when an annexation request is made, that request is made by the landowner, and there are certain things that a landowner should be entitled to do. That doesn't mean that I'm for annexation. That's just a reality of the process. And they don't take everything. I can think of two things they haven't taken in the near past. One being the ballpark and the other being the Walgreens corner. So they don't take everything, but they can be difficult to deal with. And a better phrase, I think, would be a working relationship rather than a threat.
The next question starts with Angie. All candidates have made commitments regarding their positions on various issues. Will you provide town residents a quarterly report card of your progress and status on each issue?
In the future, is that the question once elected? Okay. I think that's an excellent idea. Yes, I think a report card in the way of a newsletter. The important issues are certainly laid out during this campaign season and have been for a number of years. I think more communication needs to take place with our constituents. And to that end, when I was in office, we instituted and continued in some cases newsletters. Those newsletters at the time were coming out of the fire department and were more focused on fire department issues, which was very important, but we expanded it to all town issues. And if you've been a member of the town for a period of time, you would have received some of those emails, or excuse me, some of those newsletters. We also went forward collecting email addresses for those that wanted newsletters, because we thought at that point we could be more communicative if we had easy access to a variety of town residents in a very short notice. When we have fire issues, if we were to have water issues, if there would be any emergency, we want to be sure that we can communicate with everybody. And technology is changing, and people are getting information differently, and it's important for us to do that. So the answer is yes, we need to communicate, and people need to come and ask questions as well. As I was chair, I opened up citizen comments at the beginning of each meeting without any restriction. It was important to me as a constituent to want to be open and to welcome information. And I wanted to be welcomed when I was a constituent. I thought it was very, very important that we open that up with no limitations. That process has since been severely restricted, and I don't think that bodes well. I think everybody should have a voice, and everybody should have the ability to tell the board what they think, and then we need to be responsible.
Thank you. Joe?
As far as a quarterly report card, I have no qualms about sharing information. This room I have used a number of times to hold constituent meetings, town hall style meetings that you may be more familiar with being done on a national level to communicate with constituents that chose to follow me through a website that I have out there. That was one way that I wanted to communicate back to residents that were interested in how I arrived at my decisions. And at those meetings, it wasn't just to say, oh, here's how I voted. It was much more inclusive about here's why I voted that way, with a providing of information and details about that particular issue and how I reached my conclusion. With, again, the use of technology, whether you talk about doing it on a quarterly basis or putting out a website, it's a very simple process. I welcome all calls. I take all calls and return calls that I miss to residents. I am happy not just to have you agree with me, but I'm actually more pleased when you disagree with my position that you call me. And the reason for that is it allows me to test my theory and my opinion against the information that you have to offer. And sometimes that has led to me reconsidering or going in a different direction based on feedback that was provided by the residents. So the long and short answer is yes.
Mike?
Oh, I'm sorry. The short answer is yes, absolutely. I have run on two major issues the entire campaign. One of them was an attendance issue, and I would welcome a report card on attendance, and I have no problem with that at all. I'm committed to in-person attendance at virtually all of the town board meetings. I would never commit to 100%, you never know what's gonna happen. But I think that at this level, that is one of the obligations that a person seeking this office needs to fulfill. So I think a report card on attendance would be an outstanding idea. My second major platform has been the level of civility and decorum on the town board. And quite frankly, if I don't accomplish that in the 2-year period that the term runs, then I don't deserve another term. I've been very vocal about that. I feel I have a skill set that can accomplish that. And if it can't be accomplished in 2 years, then quite frankly, I'm not the guy to accomplish it. So I think that that would be something that would be very, very reasonable for people to hold me accountable for.
Finally, Jim?
Absolutely, a quarterly report card is necessary. However, it needs to be from the group. We don't stand alone, it's a 5-member board. When we vote, whether we wanted to or not, we stand with that decision. So it should be a quarterly report card on the entire town board, not just upon myself, but the entire board as to how the entire board voted in response to what the residents are asking for. I think there is some of that that's already posted on the website. I'm not exactly sure if there are some posting rules as far as what can go on there, but I'd also ask that we give our clerk or our new clerk a little bit of time to get adjusted before any of that could get posted on the official website. I'm more than happy to put together a email listing or even put out mailings, but again, I think it's most effective if it's coming from the entire board and is in a unified state.
Question, we'll start with Joe. What is your principle of taxation?
My principle of taxation has been out there for all to see over the last 4 years. In the first year of office, I, with Angie, lowered the tax levy. We were preparing the budget for the 2011 tax year. We reduced that tax levy back to 2008 levels. We have maintained that type of attitude. My budget that I proposed this past year offered an additional $43,000 savings to taxpayers. $5,000 of that was through a tax levy reduction, and $38,000 of that was through the funding of a septic repair fund. Instead of taking money out of the general fund, I built it into our tax levy. That has been a very strong suit of mine to stay at and reduce our taxes. I believe very simply that you take and tax the money that you need to execute the plans that you have submitted and can defend. If you do not need $4,986, which was the 2014 number that I determined we did not need, as a matter of principle, you leave that in your pockets. You don't just take it because you can. And I was very opposed to that. And maybe that's something that people would say that I bickered about, but I was inflexible because that is a principle. There is a difference between a position and an opinion and a principle. If you are a principled person on an issue, you should be inflexible on it. And I believe firmly that if I don't need $1, just because I could tax that dollar, doesn't mean that I should. I should leave it on the table as a matter of principle.
Mike?
My principle is that the taxes should be as low as possible. It was a driving force for my involvement in the fire department for 10 years. The fact is that one of the key reasons that we have the low taxes that we have in this town is because of the paid-on-call structure that we have in our fire department, letting go of full-time structure. That is really one of the key budget line items that allows us to have the taxation that we have in the town. While there's been a lot of talk about the low tax levy and the tax levy coming down over the past couple of years, I do have real concerns about how that was done. There are many, many areas where money was budgeted, and it was budgeted with the thought of being spent and still maintaining that low taxation rate. But because other bills, largely attorney bills, had to be paid, there were many, many other areas that were foregone. Items such as no money spent on crack filling in 2012. Items such as underspending substantially on road repairs in 2012. Underspending on a highway truck that was needed. So when you start to look at the budget and you start to think about taxation, while low taxation is an important principle, we still have a town to run, and we have to make sure that we run the town in a fashion that is sustainable. And when we make decisions to move money from one line item to another, that's done in the open and it's done in an appropriate way.
Thank you. Jim?
I agree that we need to keep our taxes low, but we also have a town to run. We've got some things that need to be taken care of. This year, for example, was a terrible winter as far as snow plowing and salting bills go. We need to budget accordingly. We need to pay for those things. There's going to be a lot of street repairs that are coming up. We need to take care of those. It's one thing to budget for something and it's another to not use that money. In 2012, for example, we had $60,000 budgeted for a generator that was never spent. Where did that go? Why didn't we buy the generator? In fact, in 2012, we had a total of $544,000 of budgeted items that we didn't spend the money on. Where did that go? Back into the bank to say that we saved taxes, that we were fiscally responsible? We've got a duty to the people that are here. We've got a lot of things that need to be done. We need to take care of them. I'm not in favor of raising taxes. However, I am in favor of working on a budget that makes sense. I did vote for an increase in the tax levy. Well, let's understand it was a 0.03% tax increase, which, as I pointed out at a board meeting, equated to less than $1.50 per everybody's house. $1.50. 0.03% to most people would be considered statistically no increase at all. So yes, I guess you can say I voted for taxation to the max, but in all honesty, it was taxation to make sense of the budget. I didn't look at a surprise budget that was put upon us to go beyond that. I looked at what was presented to us, and I felt we had a lot of things and still have a lot of things that money should be spent on. The money that we voted on, the money that was budgeted for, the money that you people have coming to you.
Thank you. Angie?
Demonstrated with coming into office, commitment to reduce taxes. Our taxes in the scheme of things are of course much lower than the municipalities nearby. We run at about $1.88 a thousand. The city is over $10 a thousand. So you can say they're 5 times what we are on our tax rate. Very important, I think, for all of us. We're here, many of us are here because of the great way of life and our ability to afford our homes and afford our lots. And I think that's a responsibility of the town board to make sure that one of those basic tenets, the reasons that we're here, is well maintained. I've heard numbers thrown around tonight that I don't recognize. You know, $544,000 that people don't know what happened to it, then someone's not clearly understanding the financial statements. As a financial professional, I spent many years, I was a banker for many, many years. I have a business administration degree. I'm very comfortable with numbers, very comfortable with accounting. And I want to save money. I want to save money personally, and I want to save money for the taxpayers of the town of Waukesha, and we've done that. Even with spending the money that we did on attorney fees, we still completed our projects, and we were still able to put more money into the treasury than we had before. Why? Because we understood each line item. Some people in the last election called that micromanaging. I call it managing. When you have a $3 million budget, people should know where the money's coming from and where it's going. We did that, and that's why we were able to reduce taxes from 2011 to 2008 levels, and why we were able to protect the town and still add money to the bottom line.
And Mike? What is your position regarding incorporation to protect the town's borders?
That's a difficult issue for us. If we could find a way to do it at a reasonable cost, I would certainly be in favor of that. I don't know that that's an avenue that the town is able to pursue, the key being at a reasonable cost. There are services that are required to be provided by a village, or a city for that matter, but for a village, that would be pretty substantially expensive for the town to overcome. And as we sit here, it's funny that this question comes right on the heels of the principle of taxation. Because as we sit here in a room full of people where I gotta believe that every single person is worried about what happens with their property taxes. That would really have to be a conversation that would include the entire community. There would have to be substantially increased fire and police services. There would have to be increased sewer services. There would have to be some kind of town or commerce center created. So you're really looking at something that would have to be undertaken with a consensus of the people and the population as a whole. Fundamentally, I would not be opposed to it. It is our best route to put the issue of annexation at bay. That is the best route. It gives the village a say in that process, something that we don't have as a town, but that would be a serious undertaking that would have to be a pretty hefty conversation of the population as a whole.
Thank you. Jim?
I think we should explore incorporation. I know we've looked at it in the past, and I'm not entirely sure what that would entail, but I'm relatively certain that anybody that lives on an island would be excluded from being part of the town. So my goal is that we unify the entire town, and I'm not about trying to exclude anybody for whatever reason. But I do think that there may be alternatives that we should look at and we should explore. One thing that I think we can do to at least protect us in an interim is submit the application for incorporation. That stops any type of annexation requests, and it stops them from taking any type of resources from us. I don't know how long that application can be valid for, but that again is something that I think we should research and do some exploration on. So I would be for incorporation if it's something that can be done economically and it makes sense to all of the residents, not just the majority.
Angie?
Incorporation is an issue that's been bandied about for years. Incorporation was tried in the 90s twice by the town board. It has to be initiated by a resident. At this point, $2,500 must be spent to the state in order to start an incorporation. In the 1990s, it was found that the town did not qualify. There are statutory requirements in order to incorporate. At that time, those identified areas were not addressed. Simple things like a full park system was necessary. And had they been addressed at that time, over a period of time by acquisition or by those efforts, perhaps we would be closer today to having the opportunity to incorporate. But when we came in 2010, one of the things that I spoke about, and I felt very strongly about as a plan commissioner since 1995, is losing our property. We needed to stop losing property by annexation. So we certainly explored at that time, the entire board, what options were available to us. And the incorporation option is simply, at this point in time, not something that can be done fast enough and without a tremendous amount of spending to accomplish. So we went about it a different way. We thought, how can we protect our town? And keep in mind, we've been incorporated since 1842. We've never been protected. The water service area is very controversial, but the water service area protected us because effectively no one goes in the city unless they can get access to sewer and water. And you must be contiguous to the city for that to happen. We protected you, those borders were sealed, and with it being all in, the city will probably not get its diversion.
When you speak about incorporation, you're really talking about the creation of some type of a protection for your borders. One way to accomplish that is through a border agreement. A border agreement is next to impossible, in my opinion, with the city. They have it is counter to their interest to enter into that. So I just don't believe that they'll ever have the will or desire to go down this path. However, our friends to the south, I think, have a different view of that because we also face annexation from Village, which is in our south. And there are ways to create a border agreement from our south. The fact of incorporation, as has been said many times already, we simply don't qualify. The discussion has been had. We have too many islands. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't provide the services. It is a $25,000 fee to simply promote your application into the state for consideration. And that would be a waste of $25,000 that would get thrown right back at us. The ultimate fix for this, given our current situation, is a legislative fix. The Urban Towns Association last year did work and tried to promote a new class of town, which was an urban town. We participated last year in the Urban Towns Association for one of the first times in quite a while to try to help mold that and create that policy. They excluded us as a town from participation based on the demographics that they put together. That doesn't mean that it's something we should abandon. We should be working with the Urban Towns Association to start to redefine what an urban town is and seek protection by changing the law to include the town of Waukesha as something that would be protected from the annexation process.
Thank you. There is the water service area question and also the general issue with the city and their application for the Lake Michigan diversion. What is your position on the WSA, and if you support the city's application, specifically, how do you think the town can affect in a positive way the city's application? Finally, does the town being in or out of the WSA hurt or help the city's application?
Okay. First of all, I believe that every resident is entitled to clean water. I don't think we should divide the town into factions. I think everybody is entitled to that particular right. So therefore, I would agree with the water service area as it is, by including the entire town. I also agree that the city is going to have some challenges with that. It's probably a 60-40 at best that they're going to get it, but they've said in their application that if the water service agreement is not, and the Great Lakes Pact is not accepted, it says right in the application that the service area is gone. So the Plan B that's been touted is not a viable solution. There are several solutions that the city is looking at. The most and the lowest environmental impact that's listed on the application is a combination of blending the deep water aquifers and the riverbed inducement. So I would support helping the city in any way that I can to get those going, but I would not support in any way, shape, or form the Plan C that should that not happen for the high-capacity shallow aquifer wells. So I do think that there's a lot that the town can do to help the city promote that. I do think that by getting that relationship together with them and trying to be proactive and working out a solution before it comes down the pipe is something that we all need to work on.
Angie?
Well, it's coming down the pipe, and if anybody doesn't think so, you know, read the newspaper. I mean, they were already talking about Plan B, and they call it Plan B, January of this year. They bought 13 acres of property in the Vernon Marsh, formerly known as the Lathers property, for over $500,000 in October of 2012. For 13 acres. They're serious about our water. They're planning to take our water. And if anybody thinks they're not, you know, the evidence is all there. I mean, then you're simply trying to avoid avoid what's coming. But that really wasn't the question. The question was the water service area, and I think we should address the question. My position on the water service area, I think, is very well known. It was based on research. The research because we knew what the parameters were of what the compact allowed for a diversion. Diversion water is not supposed to be used for expansion. When you look at a map of the town of Waukesha and the city of Waukesha, for the 8 states that all have to agree unanimously for this diversion, the city looks like it's doubling its size. That's not allowed. The second important component of getting diversion water is proving a need, that you have no other option for water. We have no such ability to demonstrate that. In fact, their plans are to come into the town of Waukesha if the city is not successful with the diversion and take our shallow aquifer water. They are already taking 20% of the city's water right now is coming out of our shallow aquifer. 20%. They'll take up to 10 million gallons a day with full bore. So we need to help the city. Helping the city is a smaller service area, which is what we tried to share before. It's very important that they're successful. That's the only thing that protects us from them coming to Plan B and our shallow aquifer. They may very well be required to take us out if they're allowed to continue their application at all.
Thank you. Joe?
The question basically breaks down to three pieces. One, do I agree with the water service area? I agreed to put on January 24th the limited service area in. I agreed to that limited service area because although we had been asking for 18 months for the DNR to issue a conditional approval, meaning that we would approve the entire town be included if and only if the city was successful in getting a diversion from Lake Michigan, and we were refused to get that type of a conditional approval for 18 months. After that vote took place and then the change of the election, John Merrick and I went in April and had another sit-down with the DNR, Sewer PAC, the city, and the county, and the discussion was back to this question, can we get a conditional approval? So that if they don't get their diversion, we would go back to a limited or restricted area, which was what the recommendation was from our consultants at the time. And finally, they gave us that, which made way for me to vote and support an all-included area because it protected our groundwater while also giving property owners the right, if they so decided, to annex into the city and obtain city services. That's a land rights issue, and you have that. Town board should not be involved in restricting that. But again, the conditional approval was what gave us the ability, or gave me the ability to vote in favor of that. The second part is how do we affect the application? In September of 2013, Dan Dupniak met with the Council of Governors for the Great Lakes Compact, and he was taken to task exactly for including us in the application. Shortly thereafter, 3 primary members of the city's administration have resigned and retired. They were critical in establishing their plan for water, and they've been there 30-some years serving the city. Suddenly they resign after they're taken to task on that issue.
Thank you. Mike?
Thank you. I believe the town is currently in the best position that it can be in, being included in the water service area if the diversion application is approved and out if denied. If the application is approved, it gives town residents an option for an alternate water source for the next 50 to 75 years. And I want to stress that that's an option, not a requirement. Several alternatives are included in the application, including the big 19-well plan that's being heavily publicized. In fact, that 19-well plan that's being heavily publicized has already been excluded from consideration because the city acknowledges that it's not a feasible option. It would just draw down the aquifer too quickly. It's still included in the application because when you submit the application, you're required to show that you considered all alternatives, both good and bad. That's very, very common in large capital project government applications. It also happened with the highway, with the bypass, where they considered bringing Highway 8, the bypass through town on Grandview, and that was dismissed. What can the town do to increase the likelihood of the application being approved? Quite frankly, the answer to that is to do nothing. If the town would choose to pull themselves out of the water service area now, it would likely set the application process back far enough that the city would not be able to achieve their goal of getting the water by June 30th of 2018. In order to get that through and the capital project completed within that time frame, they need to start that project probably by around the first of the year. So frankly,
We have to stop you there.
thank you.
You are starting out. A related question. Are you aware that the city of Waukesha has a couple of options to remove the radium from the water of its existing deep wells? Methods include filtration or washing the water by aeration. These methods are expensive but will work. The city is reluctant to spend the money and would rather use Lake Michigan water.
The city would like to use a number of options other than those that are best for them and best for their neighbors. The city has created its own crisis, and now it's trying to create a crisis for us. The EPA requirement goes back many, many years. The city fought the EPA for over 10 years. That's why they're in a crunch. That's why they're trying to get something done. They are blending their water now. 20% of the city's water right now comes from shallow aquifer wells. 3 wells that are situated near Fox River Park and Lonsdale. Our well study program already shows that homes in that area are being negatively affected by those wells. Their plan is indeed to do a blending. They plan to keep at least 3 of their deep wells if they have to do a plan B. And I do not tout the 19, I tout the 12 additional because that's the more conservative number that they are considering. But they are planning on blending by adding many wells to the existing program, to the 3 that they have now. They need to take between 6 and 10 million gallons a day in order to satisfy the 70,000 people in the city of Waukesha. It is very important to us to make sure that we maintain our water and don't allow the city to create the crisis. It's something that is just essential. I don't want to take us out of the water service area. That's done. That's over with. Now we have to figure out how we protect ourselves, because I believe the decision that was made is going to put us in jeopardy because the city will not get their diversion. Now, it's possible that they'll go back and take us out, and that will allow the application to go further. But if they don't, we need to be prepared.
Thank you. Joe?
Please repeat that question.
Sure. Are you aware that the city of Waukesha has a couple of options to remove the radium from the water of its existing deep wells? Methods include filtration and washing the water by aeration. These methods are expensive but will work. The city is reluctant to spend the money and would rather use Lake Michigan water.
Thank you. The deep aquifer is used by many municipalities. Those other municipalities face it's the same pool of water that they're pulling out of. Those other municipalities chose to use filtration instead of fighting the EPA's directive. Are we aware of it? Absolutely. Do I think that the city has a number of options available to them? Yes. Do I have any intention of changing the water service area? There is no reason for us to reconsider or alter what we approved. It is what the DNR and the city asked us to do. I sat in the conference room with them and I asked the question, isn't it easier if we are not included in mass in the water service area based on the fact that we all have potable water? And their answer to me was, we'd like to submit the application just as is. Whether that was because they don't want to go back through and redo the work, or whether that was they believe that they have some consensus within that governance body, that's for them to determine. They asked, they gave me what I needed to be able to support that water service area, and I still support the approval that I made back in May.
Mike?
Yes, I am aware that there are other options for the city to pursue. However, they're going to pursue them in financially responsible order as it pertains to their own needs. And the cheapest option for them is Lake Michigan water. And that's the one that they're most aggressive on right now. And the second is probably additional wells. But the most likely scenario is an additional 3 to 4 wells, or what's called riverbank wells, where they draw surface water from the Fox River and then continue to blend that water. Frankly, if they thought when they were preparing this application that elimination of the town out of the water service area would improve their chances of getting it approved, they would have never even come to ask us. I mean, they have a fiduciary responsibility to their citizens, and they have an interest in getting the approval of the diversion application. That is their primary goal. So if they thought that us being out of the water service area was going to enhance that probability, they would have never come and asked in the first place. And finally, their third choice is probably strictly scrubbing and filtering, and that is the most expensive. And they'll continue to pursue the option that is least expensive for them.
Jim?
Yes, I am aware of their filtration by aeration systems and some of the plans that are in place to look at that. However, as everybody else has said, that is not really a fiscally responsible solution for them. However, if used in the right capacity along with some other options, such as the Fox River, the Quarry Reservoir, and the riverbed inducement, it may help get them to a certain Plan B, so to speak, if the Great Lakes Pact fails. However, our goal and their goal needs to be to get them approved, to get the Great Lakes Pact approved, so that there isn't any issue as to what the next Plan B, C, D, or E continues to be. Part of the application in the Great Lakes Pact was that there is no other viable solution. So this is truly the city's best bet, is to continue to work forward with that. And yes, there's a huge expense with it as well, but it is probably their longest, I shouldn't say probably, it is their best long-term solution for plans for the city for the future. If anybody remembers back, Waukesha was known as the city of water for many years. People came from Chicago, Milwaukee, places even farther south to come and participate in the water activities that were here and the healing that was part of it. And then to have their wells go bad and to have the radium become apparent is again something that could happen to any one of us in our wells. And that's why it's extremely important that we are part of the backup plan, so that should something happen like happened in the town of Jackson, where there's a horrible spill, a hazardous material spill, that you have the ability to continue to save your land. And trust me, if you think that you can just dig a deeper well when the DNR says you're done, it doesn't work. They cap your well and you're out of luck.
Thank you. Next question. Keeping in mind that state laws don't favor the town and acknowledging that the city can condemn land and/or build the wells on city or town land without our permission, how would you stop the city?
There is only one way to stop that. There was a Supreme Court case that happened a couple of years back with Lake Beulah. Dean Lang, who was the attorney that we hired to remove the permits for those Lathers wells back a couple of years ago, was the attorney who argued that case in front of the Supreme Court and won. And this Supreme Court is a very divided court, and he received a unanimous decision in that hearing, which is very important. That piece gives us the only foundation to currently place the burden of proving that a high-capacity well will not adversely affect a local citizen's well or private well. Absent that, we would have literally no ability, in my opinion, to stop that from happening. That's where the well study program also comes in, because we have been monitoring since 2007. There's 24 wells that have been in this program that we measure depths 3 times a year, which will give us a baseline should we need to go in and fight the city on that. Currently, there is an attempt to change the legislation that's there up in Spooner, these commercial farms that want to come in and put in these high-capacity wells. They've been lobbying to change the legislation, which would strip the town as kind of a collateral damage, strip the town of that protection. And we've been trying to lobby those legislators as well not to do that. It got delayed initially. The Towns Association is still working to try and halt that change in that legislation, but it is the only way that you're going to stop those wells from going in is going to be in a courtroom, and that is the unfortunate reality because it's the only option.
Thank you. Mike?
I would certainly support the well study program and the expansion of it. I think it's our best avenue to show the adverse effects that Joe talks about. But the reality is pretty much what Joe says in this case. Stopping the city would likely be a protracted and expensive endeavor. And frankly, whether the city were to seek to add 1 well, 5 wells, or 19 wells, I would be in favor of keeping the city from taking additional water from our shallow well aquifers. But the reality is that if they're going to choose to do it, there's little we can do to stop it, and the little that we could do would likely be very expensive and held in a courtroom.
Thank you. Jim?
Unfortunately, I think as everybody said, about the only way to fight something like that is a legal battle. You go against the city, you're not going to win, and it's going to be extremely expensive. However, let's keep in mind that again, because of the Vernon Marsh and the eco-sensitivity of it, that the high-capacity shallow aquifer wells is not an option for them. Are they going to come after our water if the Great Lakes Pact isn't approved? Absolutely. I think we all know that, and I think that's part of the reason that we're all here. But I don't have a magic wand. There isn't any way that we can magically stop them. The only way would be that if the Great Lakes diversion is not accepted and we can't help them with that application and get it through, that it would be an extremely lengthy and expensive legal battle.
I feel there are more options available to us than what has been laid out so far. For someone to say that the high-capacity shallow aquifer wells aren't part of the program, they are most certainly a big part of the program. It is the program. And the reason that we had the recall in 2010 was because of 5 high-capacity shallow aquifer wells that were right in the middle of the Vernon Marsh. At the same time that the DNR was spending our tax dollars, over $1 million, to buy additional land in the Vernon Marsh, the other side of the DNR, the drinking water section, was approving 5 high-capacity shallow aquifer wells. I asked those two groups how they both came to those conclusions, one to protect and one to ruin. And they say, well, they don't talk, they have different requirements. So what do? We make sure that we have a strong town board. Don't think that having a strong town board doesn't make the city think twice on which way they're going to go. They have lots of options available to them. We just can't make coming and getting our water the path of least resistance. We simply have to be strong. They need to know that we're strong, and your town board is going to stand up to whatever stripping of rights that we have, that we've done in the past, and that's going to protect us most in the future.
Mike, you start off.
Okay.
How do you intend to represent and carry out the wishes of citizens without pressure from other town board members?
Well, I have no ties to anyone on this current town board, nor for that matter to Jim. I know all the people on the town board because I'm fairly active in the town, but I can say that I only know them in passing. I have no personal relationships with anybody on the town board. And I had never met Jim prior to us engaging in this election to get at the same time. And I think that's key to something that I can bring to the town board in its current state. When I've been out talking to the people and knocking on their door and they say, well, other people have tried that, I say to them, listen, I got nothing vested with anybody on this town board. I was not recruited to run for this position. It was a decision that I made on my own with my wife. It's not the first time that I've considered doing this. I considered it a year ago and chose not to file the paperwork just for personal reasons. And I felt like this time was the right time for me. And one of those was the fact that I could enter this town board and bring a level of civility to town board. And one of the reasons that I feel I can do that is because I don't have an association or a relationship in any way with anybody on the town board. And that's something that I think I can really bring some professionalism to the situation.
Thank you. Jim?
I have a great deal of respect for the other board members. My management experience, my professional career has all been in developing relationships. I do know Chairman Merrick, I do know Brian Fisher, in conversations that I had in regards to my business. They were supervisors and chairmen that would talk to me. I've only met Michael Durr through this election. I think I can deal with him, I think I can banter with him, I think we can debate, and that all 5 members of the board can be heard. I've known Larry Wolf for years. Our daughters, quite honestly, are best friends. I think sitting at a board table, we'll be able to agree and disagree on things, but still be able to be heard and that our opinions will be listened to. I think that's the key here, is that it's a 5-member board. It's not a 2-member board where you've got one faction against the other, or you've got 3 against 2. You've got 5 people with various education and experience levels and management experience that can and should be debating things for the benefit of the town.
Thank you. Angie?
I agree 100%. And it's interesting because we now have Sandy Tom recording the meetings and putting them out on YouTube. So everybody can see exactly what the dynamics of the board are and why perhaps there are issues. There's a lack of respect in town hall. That lack of respect is not demonstrated by everybody. And that lack of respect started in October of 2012, not before, October of 2012. So people who represent this has been going on for 5 years. It's simply not true. Listen to the digital recordings. In fact, when the last election came along and somebody called me a dictator, I believe, in one of the pieces, Sandy Hom did a study of our agreements on votes. And we were almost 100% unanimous for over 100 different items that came before the board over the years. And I didn't make the motions. In fact, I found that through Sandy's information that I didn't make any motions until November and December of 2012 when board members refused. So this campaigning that's been going on since October of 2012 was really to prepare for the April 2013 election. And I think we need to keep that in mind. There are people right now who are still trying to create controversy. It is artificial controversy. It's made to have people think that people bicker. It's even in the newspaper differently. The city discusses, the others collaborate, but we bicker. It's a demeaning term. It shouldn't be there at all. We are all talking our minds, and we need to be able to do so. But respect needs to be shown by everybody in the room. And when that happens, we won't have an issue.
Thank you. Joe?
You know, as Angie pointed out, up until late 2012, the board worked in almost unanimous decision on every issue. You can argue whether that's good or bad policy making, because I think you can argue both ways. Since October 2012, there have been a number of votes in the old board and with the new makeup of the board, which have found 3-2 votes. It almost took on a life of its own in the back at one meeting where everybody was chanting, "Here comes another 3-2 vote." I think if you look at the record, which is available on the town's website, how we vote, you will find that I am the 3 in the 3-2. If somebody has sided with one side or sided with another, it is typically me. I have never been a 2 on the side of a 3. So the answer to the question is, how would I? I evaluate the issues for the issues. I separate the people involved. I look at the facts. I remove the emotion. Emotions can change. Today you may like me, tomorrow you may hate me. Some of you in this room have been on the 3-2 vote that you liked, only to a week or two later been on a 3-2 vote that you didn't like. That was not something that was personal, that was something on the merits of the piece, the facts of the decision led me to vote the way I did.
Question to start with you, Jim. What do you have to say about the town's 2012 audit?
I think the audit needs to be completed. We have a letter from Clifton Larson Anderson that says that they will not sign off on it because it hasn't been signed by a board member, or I should say the chairman. There's a lot of issues with that particular audit. There's a lot of ineffective answers that are on there that an audit firm just is not willing to sign off of them at this particular time. One of them has to do with the budget amendments. One of them has to do with the changes that were done. It's law that when you run a business and you run a municipality, at any time that a check is written that you have monies within that particular account. You can't move them after the fact, after the check has been made, and you can't move them without board approval. And unfortunately, that is what has been done and needs to be corrected. It's fairly simple. It's an easy thing to change. It just needs to be monitored. But we do need to get the 2012 budget signed off so that we can move forward for the 2013, which also is completed.
Thank you. Andrew?
Wow, that was a whole lot of information. Unfortunately, most of it is not based in fact. The 2012 audit was completed and sent to the town and is stamped in as of November 1st, 2013. In February of 2013, Renee Messing, who's the partner at CLA, made a presentation to the town board. In fact, we had an open session so all members of the community could ask questions. She declared it a clean audit at that point in time. It was one of the earliest audits we've had in the town of Waukesha ever. because we had our arms around what needed to be done in 2012, and we were able to have the audit people in very early on. Clean audit, February of 2013. What happened after that? Excuse me, 2012. Thank you, Mr. Fisher, for not 2012. What happened after that? I don't know. I know that the management letter was not signed. That management letter is a requirement for someone to issue an audit. There is no other issue. There are no other problems. The document is complete. Because Mr. Merrick refused to sign the management representation letter, which is required to issue an unqualified audit, they had to issue the financial statements without. It's not that the audit wasn't completed. It's simply that it is not an unqualified audit. But that had nothing to do with the quality of the work or the decision by the auditor. It was because someone decided not to sign the management representation letter. That couldn't be done before I left. And so it was the responsibility of the current chair. The current chair did not bring that question to the board. The board could have directed him to sign it, could have directed the clerk to sign it. The assumption was that it was taken care of. It was not. It became campaign fodder November of 2015.
Thank you. Yep.
Clifton Larson Allen is a 3,600 CPA strong company. They're one of the top 5 audit firms in the United States. Jonathan Schutkin is their general counsel. I figured this question was going to come up. I brought 2 emails that he provided to the town board. As you may or may not be aware, the town has recently filed and possibly further distributed a complaint. He goes on to state that we, as a town, filed a complaint against 2 of those CPAs, one being one of the partners of the firm. That complaint was filed without the authorization of the board, and the board later took action to protect the town and forced John Merrick to retract that complaint. This led to lots of back and forth. That email was from November 14th, while we were still trying to get a completed letter. In February 28th, 2014, Jonathan Schutkin responded to an email that I sent him. I asked him 4 basic questions, and I'm going to read them fast so I get them. Based on general accepting accounting practices, is the audit for Town of Waukesha calendar year 2012 complete and finished? His response is, yes, the 2012 calendar year audit is finished. Based on general accounting practices, what is the specific reason that no opinion was provided? CLA, Clifton Larson Allen, disclaimed an opinion under the general accounting practices for the reasons stated. We were unable to attain written representations from management as the town as required by general accounting standards. At the time of the completion of the 2012 audit, was Clifton aware of any fact that would have resulted in an adverse or unclean audit, defining adverse and unclean as the generally accepted accounting practices? At the time of the completion of the 2012 audit, CLA was not aware of any information that would have resulted in an adverse opinion as the term is defined by general accounting practices. If the Town of Waukesha provides the signed management letter today, would you revise your opinion? They answered no. They severed the relationship with the town.
Stop you there.
This really wasn't a campaign issue for me when I was making my decision. And it really didn't come to my forefront until the first meeting in February of the town board. And what was transpiring was essentially the town board was interviewing a partner from Baker Tilly about becoming our auditor. And a question was asked, should an elected official ever have access to the financial accounting systems? And he emphatically answered, no, never. Nothing past read-only access. And it became clear to me, just through the conversation that was going on between the Baker Tilly partner and the town board and other members of the town board, that clearly in the past, elected officials had, as a regular practice, entered financial transactions into the financial system. Now, I'm not throwing darts here or anything like that. I'm talking about a process issue that clearly is not designed to be acceptable by audit firms. So I'm not saying anybody did anything improper, other than clearly we had a process issue going on in the town of Waukesha that is not considered to be acceptable. And to further that point, there's a letter here from Clifton Larson Allen, dated November 1st of 2013, where they very specifically state, in addition, the involvement of certain town board members in performing the accounting function and having access to the accounting system precludes proper segregation of duties. So to me, that process issue is a problem in the town.
You start off. What is your position on preserving the overall quiet, semi-rural nature of the town of Waukesha?
I absolutely believe that it needs to be preserved. I think you need to balance commercial development and the tax dollars that come with that, with the reasons that we're here. There's 3,300 homeowners in the town. I don't know how many business owners are here, but I'm gonna bet 99.9% of the people here own a home in the town of Waukesha. Why are you here? Because you have a vested interest. You have the value of your home, you have your lifestyle that you've chosen. And again, I think we're real smart folks for finding the town of Waukesha. Beautifully centrally located, great taxes, the ability to have, room to roam. And we need to preserve that. That needs to be on the forefront of everything that we do. Keep the taxes low and keep our lifestyle the way it is. If everybody wanted to live in the city, they would. We don't want sewer, we don't want city water, we don't want streetlights, we don't want the buses, we don't want the sidewalks. I'm gonna make a big assumption there, because otherwise those folks would have city living. Yes, commercial is important, but I do not believe in sacrificing subdivisions and neighborhoods for commercial development. I believe we need to preserve what we have, protect the neighborhood, and do smart development as appropriate, as we did during my tenure. We redeveloped the old Don Jacobs that was empty when we came in 2010. The Walmart was empty when we came in 2010, as was the property that is now St. Vincent de Paul. And those were all redeveloped during the time that I was in office. Certainly don't take responsibility for that, but we fostered relationships and we developed relationships with the developers that we were able to keep the property in. Walmart is still in the town. The St. Vincent de Paul is not. Through issues, that is now annexed to the city of Waukesha after I left. A $10,000 loss for all of us every week.
Joe?
Protection of our culture, our community, keeping it rural has to do with planning and zoning and things along those lines. Making sure that lots are not shrunk down to a point where we are overusing the natural resources, as has occurred in the city. Building multifamily housing, 300 and 400 units on a 25-acre parcel just taxes the land too high. Every time lighting, street lights, has come up in the town since 2010, no matter what pocket of the town it was in, it was aggressively spoken that you didn't want street lights. Nor do I. I like dark skies. It's one of the reasons that we live where we live. I don't want sidewalks, I don't want curbs, I don't want the expense that comes with that. How do you protect that? It has to be a philosophy that you're going to not overdevelop land, that you're going to use the land intelligently from a stance of whether that land should be a commercial. If you can put in industrial, how do you and where do you put those in at so that they don't impact adversely the community around you? The Walgreens was an example of an area where we wanted the commercial development. It was good for the town. My neighbors didn't want the Walgreens or Aldi in large majority. I voted for that development. I countered that balance by negotiating with the property owner to keep that at a 10 p.m. shutdown time and a 24-hour drive-through. That reduced the impact that was adverse to the neighbors, kept that noise down and the road traffic down at a time that they felt was sensitive, and I thought that created a win-win proposition for the town and the developer as well as the neighbors.
As with others at this front of the room tonight, I too love what the town is all about, and it's why I'm here. It's why I chose the house that I did. I remember very specifically a day back in 2000 where I looked at a house in the city and a house at the town on the same day and looked at the tax bill and the sidewalks and the lights, and it was the last house that I ever looked at in the city of Waukesha. It wasn't the house that I ended up buying in the town, but it was a townhouse, and that's where I wound up. And I am about preserving that. But I am also about appropriate commercial development. Since I've been attending town board meetings for 11 or 12 years on a consistent basis, I have consistently heard, usually driven by the fire chief, Dan Buchholz, about commercial development, commercial development. We gotta have some commercial development. Now, he wasn't talking about paving over the town of Waukesha and putting a Walgreens or a CVS or a car dealership at every location, but he was talking about appropriate levels of commercial development in the town because of the positive effect that they have on the tax base that we are all engaged in. And so I do favor commercial development at the appropriate level, in the appropriate locations. And I understand that sometimes that's in somebody's backyard, and those are difficult decisions to make. But where it's appropriate through zoning and through traffic areas, I do support commercial development. I fear, now that we've all read, that the constant infighting in the board is one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons we have recently lost the Walgreens. Because it's critical, once you make that decision to have commercial development, that you look for a good corporate citizen. And I believe that's what we could have had in Walgreens.
Thank you. Jim?
We moved out to the town after having a house up by the hospital in the city of Waukesha. One of the reasons we moved out here is that it was affordable as far as the tax base, but it also was the peace and quiet that we got. We didn't have the sirens going by to the emergency room up by the hospital, but unfortunately when we first moved here, that was the only house that we could afford and the only area that we knew would be adjacent to where we worked. Once we came out to the town and we noticed how quiet it was and you could actually hear the wildlife and the frogs and the birds, it was a whole different experience. It would be great to have everything stay as it was. All the farmland never be developed and everybody running around enjoying the way that it was. But the fact of the matter is that things are developing. And if we don't react and be proactive with the developers and work with them to develop the proper use of that land, they're going to annex to the city and be gone anyways. So I agree that there needs to be that appropriate use of residential and business development so that we can all enjoy the low tax rates that we have and still enjoy the large lots that we have and the so-called country living that we have here.
Thank you. We've reached sort of the end of the program, and I'm sorry I didn't get to all of the questions. I tried to get to most of the ones that were distinct. We will have closing remarks now, starting with Joe.
I first of all want to say thank you for caring enough about the town of Waukesha to spend your night with us and ask good questions and get those answers. I think that's an important part of the electoral process. I would ask you, as you consider who you vote for, to evaluate the record that I've built. I'm the only current incumbent sitting here with a record that you can evaluate. That record includes reducing your tax levy, not because I was forced to, but because it was the right thing to do. That record includes finding ways to negotiate and reach settlement with people who had differing opinions. The Five Diamond Sport Complex, Mr. Bryant had a concern about his billing process that he had back then, and right in public session, I sat with Mr. Bryant and negotiated out a settlement that was a piece that we were able to put that to rest and move forward. I've tried many times to collaborate with the city officials, with county officials. When we lost our clerk that same day, I was sitting in front of the county clerk asking about what are the steps we need to take, where are the danger spots that we have now that we had no clerk treasurer. And she was critical in helping me obtain a solution to that problem and making sure we were on task for the election. I've done the work. I spent the time to put in the research to make sure that my vote was based on fact and based on knowledge, not based on emotion or based on the individual person that stood on the other side of the microphone making the request for a certain petition or a certain request. Thank you.
Thank you. Angie?
The town of Waukesha is near and dear to my heart, as I think it is with all of you. And I've heard a lot of things said tonight about financial statements and the like. The bottom line is, we want to have people on our town board that are going to look out for our interests, that have the backbone to stand up for the principles of reducing taxes and providing a lifestyle that we all came here to do and to enjoy. I mean, think about the railroad noise. It's something that we need to address. This is a lifestyle issue. It's a hassle. And I have yet to see a town board take that up and make a real protracted effort to fix it. These are the issues that we need to be dealing with. For someone to quote that there's an issue with a financial statement, the town of Waukesha didn't even have the ability to run a financial statement when we walked in the door in 2010. Yes, there were activities there in 2011. Because of my background, I was able to help the town save what's now been quoted as $150 an hour as a QuickBooks expert, because that's what the town has just engaged. You know, that's the work that I did to save us money, to contribute to the bottom line, and to provide as much responsible oversight as possible. I care about the town. I want to reduce taxes. I want to keep the town while being smart, but we need people with the backbone and the knowledge to be able to stand up to the city as need be. Joe Bansky and I, although we're sitting next to each other, don't always agree. In fact, we've had some famous rivals as far as that goes. But that's a healthy dialogue. It's important to have people that can respect each other, work with each other, but aren't linked arm in arm. We all need to bring our own thought process and our belief in how we should be serving you, and that's what I wish to continue to do.
Thank you. Jim?
I also want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Great turnout, so thanks for spending your evening here. My campaign promise is to end the bickering. My business background and my real-world experience allows me to do that. I've already explained how I respect and get along with the other board members, and I'll expand that to the other town relationships, the city of Waukesha, which is extremely critical, the town employees, the contractors, the businesses, both current and potential, and our residents. I'll proactively work to ensure a proper balance of residential and commercial, and my transportation background will help induce a healthy debate as far as 3 budget items that affect us that revolve around trucks and transportation. Garbage pickup, replacing fire equipment, and snowplow equipment. Not sure if it's something that we want to get into, but I have those facts. That's what I deal with. I know the hours of service regulations and the reality of hiring CDL drivers to run snowplows. I'll also ensure my support is given to the fire department and the staff and our contracted vendors, which oftentimes are our spokespersons out there and represent the town. And above all, I'll listen to the residents, and I'll do whatever I can to keep this town as it is.
Thank you. Finally, Mike.
Thanks. We've heard many opinions here tonight on many different issues, but I still feel the number one issue confronting the board is the inability to get along on a level that allows them to conduct business. In the 6 weeks that I've been knocking on doors, it has confirmed to me that people are genuinely concerned on their local government's ability to cooperate to do the town's business. It's not that they feel we always have to agree, but when we disagree, they want the business of the town to get done. There's nothing healthy with the constant personal attacks that occur on the current board. I don't believe returning the former chairwoman to the board with the chairman who defeated her in the last election will do anything to improve this situation. I have no personal ties to anyone on the board, and I will always act in what I believe is the best interest of the town above all others, including me. I thank you for being here tonight, and I ask for your vote next Tuesday.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all the candidates for this evening and thank the audience for coming out.
Yeah, that's apparently,